Hi, welcome everybody. Today we're talking about remainders, the hows and the whys of them. We have Jeff Hudson from Artemis Book Sales, Nikolai Grant from Books Inc., and Amy Thomas. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Ann. So it looks like to me that we have 3 participants that are not either us or Rachel, who is a sales rep for Great Jones. So I'm wondering if maybe Carol, Jenny, and Mimi could maybe just come on and let us know just generally what your store is like and what your experience with remainders is, and kind of what you're curious about for us to talk about, and we'll kind of adapt things to your needs.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Mimi. I'm at La Playa Books, and we're a small bookstore down in San Diego in the Point Loma area. I've met Amy before. Amy's called on us in our store. Hi, Amy. We're small, like 1,000 square feet.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. Before the COVID times, we were 80% used and 20% new, and now that has flip-flopped. And we've always been interested in trying to do remainders, but we've never been really able to figure out how to do it time efficiently to be able to pick good books, because we know that there's deals to be had out there. We just are time strapped because it's one full-time person and I am a half-time person, and that's all we got pretty much.
Do you know where remainders come from, or in general? Yeah. Okay.
So, I'm pretty familiar with the landscape. The landscape and how it's great and stuff. And we've, looked at covers and stuff before at various fairs, like back at Book Expo a million years ago when we went.
Yeah.
But it's just the efficiency of being able to figure out how to put that in my day, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm working with my 3-year-old.
Oh.
So we do remainders, but mostly during the summer, and it's mostly staff recommends because we're not a very big store. So our sell-through is usually during the tourist season, and we just didn't really buy them this year because nobody's coming into the store right now.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just looking to see if people have other ideas on how they've been moving their remainders, because it's kind of a pain to list them on our website.
Yeah. Okay. That the website issue actually came up in our preliminary discussions, and technically we probably don't have much help for you on that right now, but we can talk about things that have been selling for us right during COVID, and certainly with stores that are partially open or not open to the public. It definitely hurts the remainder tables. So. And what's your store?
Sorry, it's Welcome Bookstore in Hood River, Oregon. I've purchased from Amy.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Most of our relationships over email.
Yeah, exactly. I totally know who you are now. My apologies.
And I'm from Picklebees, and I just occasionally get involved in helping pick some things out. And I was just lurking here to learn a little more. And I'm going to put the camera off because I just can't stand to look at myself anymore.
That's okay. That's all right. Okay, so I actually I do know all of you, although I didn't immediately recognize you. So thanks for joining us. I was going to talk initially about like what is a remainder, and I think that my sense is that pretty much all of you know kind of, like we said earlier, the basic landscape, and we call, we roughly group remainders. We call them remainders, but that includes Hertz, publishers overstocks where they stay in print, bargain books that are published, value published, and all of them kind of blend together in terms of the places that you can shop and buy them. So I basically just went over the information on the side, but I just wanted to point out that the PowerPoint presentation, really what I had hoped to do with that is just provide some examples of how different ways that people have marketed remainders in their stores. And there's kind of a myriad of different ways you can display them, price them. And one of the advantages, of course, of remainders is that you set the price. And Nick and Amy are going to talk about that in a little bit. So, a few minutes here. If you want to go to the next slide.
One thing, if I can interject, Jeff, is like the branding of remainder, bargain, sale books. I don't know, Amy, do you call we call our section sale books. I know everyone calls it something, somebody call it closeout area. You guys call it bargain, is that right?
Actually, we've always sort of avoided calling it anything on a sign. Books for sale, great prices. Internally, we call them stacks books because we stack them up. Although we do a lot of books now on the shelf as well as stacked up, but that's our nomenclature.
Okay. Yeah, I just see it done various different ways. So it's a question whether you want to keep them together or mix them in, or that's interesting. You don't even give it a name per se, but that's,
well, nobody liked the word bargain very much.
Yeah, the sale book, this sounds
the
awesome.
store. And also remainders is a little bit misleading. Some of them are remaindered and some of them are hurt.
Right.
And, so we just, great prices. You'll love these books.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think this was an eternal debate at Powell's when I was buying there, and I think we did kind of settle on the sale book thing because bargain didn't seem exactly to represent kind of the quality in a way, and it kind of bespoke to more promotional titles. So this slide I only wanted to present because if you look at the bottom of that first row, you can see little dots on the bottom of the books, and then even further back, it's a little hard to see in this slide, but there are some remainder marks, and I just wanted to present this for those that maybe were new to remainders, but I also, with most vendors, you can actually specify if you prefer not to have dots or marks. And dots or marks are, again, a horrible name, are often called hertz, and those are, generally speaking, the publisher returns, and the publishers are the ones who mark the books, not the wholesalers. So
just to be clear, Jeff, those are, you might ask for only books that are not marked that way and it'll come from another thing. It's not that they're going to sell you the same book either marked or unmarked.
No, exactly. So what you're doing is you're requesting that the books are unmarked, but if they are, then they'll just leave them on the shelf. So they really have little or no control about what.
Right. Just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
A good clarification. Yeah. Okay, Amy and Nick, this is where you guys should come in and talk about where you buy remainders. And I think actually this is probably what people are most interested in.
Oh yeah, so at this point, we do about 60% of our buying online and on lists versus 40% in person, either with a rep or at a show. Some websites load new titles daily, and others load them weekly. It really depends on when they get stuff. Yeah, we shop in that way generally. Normal times, it used to be much more geared towards shows. I would save a third of my budget, for example, for Book Expo, let's say, and spend, so it would be a big significant amount of my buying would be done at Book Expo. But that's kind of gone away now, where we use Book Expo more for, you see a lot of things visually where you wouldn't get on a website, but still it's more for building relationships and things of that nature with reps, and see who's new out there who maybe you haven't seen already. I mean, that being said, with buying online and on lists, I would say you always find stuff when you look at something in person. I always find things that I skip online and I see it in person. I go, oh, wow, this is an amazing book. It's got great illustrations, things you can't really judge when you're looking at, let's say, 1,000 books on an Excel spreadsheet. So even though we have gone more toward the buying virtually, we're still find it necessary to do the show, Sorobi, meet with reps individually and look at the books physically or just with the rep on their iPad or something like that. Both ways work, but it's good chopping it up with the rep also, and kind of like I will ask, hey, they might mention to me like, oh, Amy did really well with this over Pegasus, and things like that, or vice versa. I think, right, Amy, we draft off each other shows all the time. So I think it's that kind of one-on-one interaction with a rep or a business owner is really helpful to get the right mix of books. But because sale books are so finite, you can't wait for those shows. A lot of the good titles just evaporate within a week. So you got to hit their websites regularly to get those books. And then it's a question of whether to ship it all at once or whether to consolidate and get enough to ship later. So, and that you have to work out the individual vendor you're buying from. So that's kind of the way we're geared now, is that's the direction we're going.
So Nick, just if I can interject, Nick mentioned something that I think is really helpful, which is that most of the vendors that certainly Artemis sells for, and I think most vendors in general, will, for a limited time, will hold your orders so you can collect multiple orders for consolidation, mainly because they realize it's just so expensive to ship books to the West Coast. And they do vary on how long they're willing to do that, but I think in general, Rachel's probably going to be moving in her seat a little bit here, but generally a month is fine for people to hold. So if you want to place multiple orders, that's a great way to kind of collect the titles that you're interested in without having to press the go button right off the bat.
If you ship small orders, it could cost you $1 a book or something, where we want to be more like 25 cents a book to ship. So if we send 3 boxes at a time, 5 boxes, that can really, if it's UPS going UPS ground, that could just totally ruin our margins. So being cognizant of the shipping is real vital if you want to really hit some nice margins, nice discount numbers on these titles.
In person, always best, always more fun too. The remainder world of people is really, by and large, at least people I hang with, super bookish and fun, and know they have something cool and fun, and it's great. It's a great job, actually, to be able to do the remainder buying. It's very much scavenger hunting in a way, but it's very fruitful. And I think this next year, sadly, is going to be super fruitful if we can just keep our businesses alive enough to figure out how to sell more remainders so we can buy more remainders, because everybody in the whole country is sending all their stock back as fast as they can to the publishers. So, there's a moment now when I'm hoping that the remainder companies can dig deep and find enough money to buy stock for us. But for now, we're trying to figure out how to sell it. So So I was just responding to, I think, to Mimi, who said something about trying to, do this job with not many people and nobody dedicated. And boy, do I hear that. I mean, I am trying to do my 3 stores with half our staff right now and short hours, and it's hard. But it's real fruitful. And so one of the strategies, if you don't mind if I go off text a little bit, Jeff, do you? One strategy might be to just, pick one of these very fruitful remainder companies that are we are seeing tons of great things, Great Jones being one of them. Rachel works there. And just, dedicating yourself to it, and maybe consider looking through for things you can kind of buy a lot of, which both gets your book count up, and also it gives you something you can kind of, market in some way, and you can put it in your window, and there's some things you just know you can sell. I think it's super problematic to buy and list books to sell online, because now you're shipping out $1.6 million books, and that doesn't make sense. But to the extent that you still have people at least coming up to your door, if you have a really nice supply of some really strong books that you got at a good price, you can, I think it's easy to sell, to market those in your store. I just put in a plug for, if everything is back to normal, we also used to go to England to buy books, which seems extravagant, and it kind of is, but it did end up paying for itself. And our relationships with our British remainder folks means that we get a steady supply of books that almost nobody, except the people on this call, have in their bookstores. They're unique. You can price them however you want. For us, it pays for the trip and then some. And and we also buy periodically through lists. Jeff reps some of those. So, and they've worked out some cost savings, so the shipping is not as bad as you might think. So I just wanted to add that to what Nikolai was saying about these other things. The regional shows were good. There are some reps that come around with a ton of books in person, at least 2, and we have actually invited her to bring other buyers to that, to look at that, just to kind of save everybody some time and money. And that may be a good model going forward when people can't go to shows, but they still want to see the books, is maybe, you know, a rep could send out a ton of books and people could come one by one and look at them in my warehouse or something like that. So I think that, again, there's going to have to be some creative strategies. But for me, the biggest thing now is wanting all these books and not quite knowing how to sell them in the same way without people coming in. And that's just nothing I can fix right now.
Yeah, I think having, you know, if you look at our BookSync's Yelp reviews, there's a disproportionate number of positive reviews for our gift and our sale book section are the 2 areas I get comment on the most by far. You know, they kind of expect to get the bestseller or this and that, but then if you find a great book for $8 or something, a classic or something you've been meaning to read, then it's like, oh wow, and then they get real excited, and that I think opens up your customer base a little bit, you know, to make it a little more egalitarian, and it brings in some new people. You get a lot of educators who buy tons, you know, hundreds of kids. They're on a tight budget and they buy hundreds of kids books. We have that happen frequently. House stagers who come in who are on a budget again, who want to stage their houses, they buy $1,000 worth of books sometimes, and they just come in and load up. They could do it for a bargain. So it's a way. We find that it's really popular with not only our customers, our staff love it too. And generally it's a really good way of kind of getting that add-on sale. We find it doesn't hurt sales of trade books at all. They don't compete. We don't display them together. We keep them in separate areas. So sometimes it's a separate customer, but sometimes the customer might walk by the section and just see something. And we have the pretty big front stickers on them, and it might, you know, we try to, it's kind of a garish sticker that we have, but it's beating them over the head with it, but like was at $19.95, now at $7.98 or something like that. And we find that that's real effective. And it's a good way to kind of add on to your sales per receipt sales. And like I was speaking to earlier with the great margin, you know, roughly almost 60% discount. Because remainders actually only make up of BookSync 8 to 10% of our sales at our neighborhood stores. But again, we make a fair amount of money because of the great price we can put them at compared to what they cost. Net pricing.
I just wanted to add that it's the one area that for the last several years we have had to have zero worries about whatever Amazon is doing or not doing.
Right, 100%. Yeah, it's a great thing when you could beat Amazon's price on a book. I mean, that's like very rare for an independent to be able to do that. And that's a little victory for us when we can do that.
Can you guys talk about how you price your pricing strategy for remainders?
Can we do it legally? So we like to get as much money as possible. That's our basic strategy. And, you know, over the last years, we've crept those prices up as much as we think they can bear, because they're still a good deal. And people don't seem to notice $1 here or $1 there until they do. And we've had to actually back off. And, you know, some books just, I think kids' flat picture books, there's just not a lot of room there typically to those. I can't mark up. There's certain categories that just need to be, you know, pretty cheap. But and also we don't like to mark it up too much, because it's a really good selling point to have you know, inexpensive books. Like, that's great. And even though maybe we don't make as much per book, we sell 3 times as many as we did when the book was new. So but my general rule of thumb is to just try to at least add $1 to whatever is suggested. It helps cover the shipping and the costs and handling, and it'll make you feel super comfortable. And if you ever have to go down and mark down that book, you'll be able to do it, pretty drastically and still make some money.
Yeah, we've raised our average per sale price from about 5 years ago. We were like at $6.25 per book average sale. Now we're up over $9 per book sold, and we haven't seen diminished unit sales off of that. So there's a real. I mean, I'm always at the side of, oh, people are going to be scared. They're going to be scared off. But all the staff at the stores tell me there's no reluctance or price. They're just happy to find the book, like you said, cheaper than Amazon. So especially in the Bay Area, there's no reticence for the pricing. So the $9 I think we're $9.06 so far this year is our average price per book sold, and we haven't seen any diminishment in the units. So we're making with shipping, we're making 58 to 59% discount on each one sold, and that's factoring in shipping on each one. We're trying to get to 60% as kind of our goal for this year. I don't know with this whole thing happening if it'll happen or not, but that was kind of our goal going into 2020. But so it's a better margin. We usually just keystone and add $1, kind of what Amy said with gift. If it's $10, we charge like $20.95 or something like that. With remainders, it's more like $10. You're charging $24.98. It's more in that range, and that you have to. It's a little bit more handling. You have to pay for freight, all that other stuff. So it's a real consideration. But I find that it's as long as you give a person a bargain, they're surprised and appreciative.
It's also you can find a book that is your book. You know what I mean? It's like for your area. Everybody in your area knows it. They love it. You know this book. You can get a lot of that, and you can price it however you want. Right. You will sell a lot of it, and I feel like it's good to remember, especially maybe if you're in a tourist area or seasonal or something. You will find it's possible to find the very iconic books from your area, and scoop them up because you'll be able to sell them kind of season after season.
Yeah. If you just do a keyword search in a website or an Excel spreadsheet for Amy, East Bay or Berkeley, or if I do San Francisco, and you can just really narrow it down where you're not combing through all this stuff. So there's a way to do it where it's more targeted, where you're not having to look through a 1,000-line Excel spreadsheet or something and find that local interest book. It isn't 100% foolproof, but you'll find local authors that way if they have BISAC information. So that's a good way of kind of just poaching some really good titles that have local interest for your customers. Anything on?
So in terms of best practices, I think maybe you guys have hit a little bit of it in terms of shopping the websites. And I think I did put specialty dealers or specific needs, and I would definitely kind of put that in even the largest and smallest stores have their particular interests. And the one thing I will say too is that you often have vendors who have certain personalities that match your stores as well. So it's good. Earlier I posted the Cerobi link, and the main reason that I did that was just because it lists all the remainder vendors that are out there. So it's a good way to kind of explore the different options as far as remainder vendors go.
Yeah, I mean, as a general, promotional books you wrote down, Jeff, promotional books aren't as strong as they once were. I mean, I remember 15 years ago when I started buying, that was a real strong area. But for us, it's the more publisher, printed Hertz or overstock returns type things that are really selling for our folks. Unless it's a San Francisco specific promotional book or something like that, we're usually a little bit reticent to get into that area.
I think that's really true. And I remember a rep that some of us knew really well who was, criticizing us for passing his perfectly good railroad book. you know, and this is a perfectly good book about trees, and these package books. And the fact is that, and something that we had to really try to keep talking to people like that about, is every book we pick is still a book we're going to carry in our store. You know, it has to earn its place there. It's got to make sense to what we do and what we are and what we're about. And we don't get it just because it's cheap and it will cover territory on a space where it's brand new. It has to be great. And, you know, if we need a couple of train books for some reason, and we say, which never happens, but maybe we do, you know, we can pick up ones or twos and we'll put them on the shelf next time we're buying, you know, in a company. We can fill out some of the little, you know, we never see books on knot tying anymore. I'm going to get some knot tying, you know, but generally it reflects our literary sensibility. The kids' books have to be great. We actually sit and read them, you know, if we get the opportunity to do that, or we know it because we've sold it. You know. So the idea that your remainder, you know, display is going to be some, you know, weird, bright, bargainy thing is just has not been our experience, and it's not what sells for us. And it's one of the pleasures actually of doing remainder buying is you really are, these are the books that 2 or 3 years ago, publishers were putting a ton of budget and sending emails and sending authors. These are books that are pretty good, you know, by and large, and we can find things that we thought were pretty good for us specifically that we may have passed when they were, you know, a rep, you know, showing us this great history book or something, and it's just really, but we kind of note it. It sounds like it's a pretty cool book, and when we see it, we can put it out cheaper. We can sell a bunch.
Yeah, we've gone away from the mid-list fiction type books where we used to be able to sell them. People would take a flyer on an author they didn't know and pick it up for, you know, back in the day, $4.98 or something like that. But now we just use what you alluded to is like we use trade sales. What did the trade book sell well? We're not just like, oh, it didn't sell at $24. It's going to sell at $7.98. Whenever that happens, you're looking at them 6 months later still. So yeah, we're definitely, that's changed a little bit, the mid-listy type stuff. If we're going to take a chance on anything, it's more likely to be like a NYRB literary thing that makes this maybe section or poetry that maybe makes it a little more interesting that we don't carry a ton of in trade, but even that, it's real minimal and for targeted stores that have a real literary fiction or poetry audience.
You know, it actually, we get tons of information when we're actually sitting and buying books. We, you know, we scan it and see how we did as a new book. And, you know, we may look and say, oh, you know, our buyers only picked one up at each store, which is not untypical for us. We, you know, really, really thrifty when it comes to buying new books. But to me, as the remainder buyer, that says, oh, you know what? My 3 buyers thought this was good enough to bring in and put on the shelf. That means I'm going to get it for my stacks, probably, because they had a chance to really be sold it.
Right.
So even a small number, if we ordered it, it was probably pretty good.
We do a thing also where we order volume 1 of a series of books. Sometimes it's a tricky thing. We order volume 1 and then hope that the person likes it, and then they buy number 2. And we rarely buy number 2 or 3 of sets as sale books because it's too random. But maybe they buy the next 2 at your store at full price if they get into them. So you just kind of hook them with that. I guess that's kind of deceptive, but you know, but it's a way of, you know, introducing a series to someone who maybe wouldn't normally be exposed to it. So that's another strategy we use. And we also, because the art section at our store, it costs so much to fill a trade art bay. You know, there's $75 per book. To stock a regular trade art section. We use a little bit more from Great Jones. We buy a lot of sale books to fill like a sale. So we have a sale art section that's probably the same size as our trade section because it's a way of kind of having that section, but not spending a ton of money and tying up a ton of cash in that one to cover that section.
So the last part of this is really just some examples of, again, the way that folks have, including the present company included, have displayed remainders. So here's Books Inc. And then the next slide, Anne, would be great. Here's some shots from Amy's store, including a couple of her picks for remainder picks that that she has there. Amy, did you want to talk about anything, or Nick, about your stores?
My little screen is covering it, but let me just say, oh, that's my Emily. It's just, I just again wanted to say that we're seeing books that we really, really liked selling new. And so it's fun to have those on the sale table too. And we can also pull blurbs that we wrote originally for the new book. We can pull that and stick that right in the remainder. And it just kind of ties the room together, if you like, that all the books are, highly recommended and so on. That actually is, yes, that is from 66 book. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Jenny's question. That is a British book that's from 66, which is, I think, one of the, that's one of the companies that Jeff represents. And so that's the other good thing. Some books are forbidden to us in England. We can't buy the British edition, and they're pretty strict about it. But we buy a lot of them, and it's really exciting to see the cool editions, different editions of the book. When we were first going years ago, we used to see the British Harry Potter books and bring those back in some quantity. And it was really fun because if you'll recall, before they slammed the door shut on us, actually, but it was fun because there was all this sort of talk. The news was that the language had been altered and it was more Americanized. And so it was a way of saying, oh no, this is the real deal. Nothing changed.
Yeah, for our display, it looks like you kind of do the same thing, Amy. We generally have more face outs. We encourage our staff members or our sale book folks to have face outs. I mean, some spined in between if it doesn't fit naturally to kind of fill in a shelf. But generally we go for having face outs. Single copies we'll put maybe in one area, but we actually tell them if it doesn't sell within a few weeks to just send them back to our warehouse. And then we either redistribute them to a store that has multiple copies, or we use them for a warehouse sale later. But we encourage stacks, like you said, stack books, the old line of stack them high and watch them fly type scenario. If you have a big stack, a healthy stack, it's gonna move if it's the right book. And usually that's 4 to 6 copies, depending on how thick the book is for us a face out. So if it's a trade paper, it's probably 6. If it's a bigger cookbook, probably 4. So that's the kind of number I have in my head. If we have 10 locations, so if you're just doing times it times 10, if you're going to display it everywhere, that's the kind of number you work off of. So if you want to face out at every store. And generally, I want a 5-week supply of the book. So I feel like then every customer comes by our store to sees the book. If I buy a book, let's say 20 copies of a book, and it sells out within the first week, and they had more, the company had more to sell, I made a mistake. I didn't buy enough. I should have bought 60. I blew it. So yeah, I really want to have a 5-week supply. Is it generally good where every one of your customers maybe cycles through the store and sees it? And that way you feel like you didn't sell it short either by not buying enough. Because if you sell 20 in a week, that's a good number for us.
I would like to add that I think that generally new bookstores really understand the power of stacking books and featuring, and used bookstores really understand the price, how price can make a difference. And I know that we have some on this call, and in general, a lot of the best stores are new and used because they understand both, and they create displays that can sell incredibly well. And I think,
Amy, do you mix your sale books with your trade or your new books? Do you?
Not at all with the trade or new books, but we do put a sticker. We have a lot of used books. We're actually more by anything else. We're used books,
right.
But so we just put it on the shelf alphabetically, sticker and all, and then it gets rung in the proper way when it gets to the counter. But we buy books specifically for the shelf too, just 1s or 2s. It's authors we know we like, and I want 6, or so we're a little bit infamous because I have 3 stores, so we do 6s. So our number is 18, which is when we're saying to, you know, to sales reps, 18, they're like, ugh, you know, but, what is it with the 18?
Yeah.
But we don't hesitate. If there's something that was just a real scoop for us and was a real scoop in as a new book, we'll buy a ton.
Yep.
As many as we think we can get away with. And remember, you know, even if you get 60 or 70 of a book, if it's $3, that's not a huge invoice. If it's something you really just are dedicated to, especially if you have a blurb for it. We have books that we keep buying. Like I think The Tender Bar is a book that was recommended by one of my staff. It's his pick, and the author came in, was moved, and there was this whole thing. And we sell it every time we see it, we buy it because it goes in his staff picks and he can sell it.
Yeah, I have way more cases of things I feel bad I didn't buy enough of than things I have bought my things where, but I'm generally kind of conservative because we don't want to deal with markdowns and doing all that. It's a lot of labor.
Right.
So, but I'm just thinking back when you mentioned, you know, those titles, it's like, yeah, there are a lot. I could think of offhand where I should have bought, there was like 500 available. I should have just bought them, you know, like 300 or 200 or something like that, where I only took 100. And it sounds like a lot, but we went through those in 5 weeks or whatever. We could have just kept on selling them continuously. So generally, looking back, I really feel like that's where I kind of err towards, is not buying enough. And it's a mindset, you know, it depends on what time of year it is. You hit me in September, I'm probably going to buy a little deeper than February. It's just the nature of the beast. But yeah.
But I wanted to leave some time for questions from anyone in the audience here, and then we can do some rep picks if we have time. Anyone out there? Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I said we've got time for rep picks. I do, you know.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. Sorry, guys. You guys have 3 stores, huge warehouse. I have no space. And so I'm very curious about what happens if you buy, like, just say for scale's sake, 100 books. How many of those would you have left over, and what would you do with them since you can't return them?
We would not buy a book, 100 of a thing, if we be left.
No. So like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, or 18, 18, 18, 18. I'm just saying for scale.
Oh, I see.
If you bought.
Do you have wall cases? Do you have a lot of wall cases?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, this is a stupid question. But we found that we actually have a lot of success with putting really good hot overstock way up on the top shelf that's normally used for people can't really shop, but they can still see it. And so you can put a ton of books up there actually, up high in the store. Other than that, we do have a warehouse space that we can sell books, but we try not to buy books for the warehouse. We really try to buy, except with those exceptions that I'm talking about when we're buying, 100, mostly we're buying enough for 6 at each store at once, and then 1 or 2 other stores might get another 6 if they sell them well.
So you guys don't have a lot of experience with like, these last 2 just have been sitting around for 3 years and nobody's ever buying them. That's not something that's happened to you.
Oh yeah, but we don't let it go 3 years if we can help it. We call through, and if it's something, the last copy goes and either, like I said, into a cart. The cart's a great place for us. We have these, sale carts we put outside, which I refer to as the kidneys of the store. But you can take a $6.99 book and put it out there for $3 and they'll sell. So I just try to keep them moving, and don't weep too much if a book has to be marked way down. It's going to be irresistible at $2 or $3 in a box or something like that. But I hear you. I mean, space is the thing, and I think they don't sell as well unless you give them, some space to really have enough to make it look like a real thing. So, yeah.
And do any of you guys buy these to supplement? I don't know if any of you are used book focused, but just to supplement your regular used book inventory, where you would only have like 1 or 2 or 3 of a title that, sells well as a used book for you, as opposed to having them in stacks?
Oh yeah, yes. We often buy our other favorite number, which is 3. for the shelf. And so that's for a lot of like university press books, art books, things that we're not willing to make seasonally, you know, if we're not willing to make the commitment, but we want them around. And sometimes we just want it in the inventory. So yeah, definitely. They're great on the shelf as used books. And also because they're pretty and they're clean.
Yeah. And art books, that would be huge for us.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do.
We use 8 months as our criteria. We run a sort saying received 8 months or prior, and sales under X amount. And then that's when we make our decision. Okay, is it selling at another store? Do we need to mark it down? Usually that's only like per store. I'm going to start that process right before fourth quarter. So that's kind of my head right now. Usually that only runs, you know, about 40 to 50 titles generally per store where we're running into those things where that we've had them. Some just we had a lot and they're just kind of slowly trickling. You don't have to do anything with them. But about 20 to 30 of those you'll have to do something with and figure out. Like Amy spoke to, having a cart is a huge thing. You know, even if you buy it, if you try to sell a book you bought at $2 and you try to sell it $7.98, if you still get $3.98 for it, you're still getting double. You know, and our space, like anyone in California's space is so valuable. You got to just get it, you know, get it out. If it's not working for whatever reason, you just got to move it. So yeah, we find that's what we use for our old stock criteria is 8 months, but I don't know if that helps at all.
It does. And then
also they make good donations too. They make good donations too, Mimi. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, we get a lot of donations from the public and we're always sorting through and trying to get rid of stuff. So, and we have a cart, but it's a 50-cent cart. It's the biggest bargain in California.
50 cents.
Put yourself a $2 cart out there, miss.
Yeah, you might have seen that sign earlier that said going, going, gone. That was actually in Monroe's in British Columbia, and they are primarily a new bookstore, but they do stacks of remainders, and that was their way of dealing with the 1s and 2s after you no longer have a stack. But definitely at Powell's, we were constantly moving stuff into the section, so you get down to the last 1 or 2, you move it there, and then I mean, as a used bookstore, you know, especially since you probably know how long something's been on the shelf, and so that going, going, gone or cart area is fabulous for that kind of final stage.
And we're not open for browsing right now, so I feel like this is an awesome conversation for, you know, normal times.
Yeah.
But is it working right now? We're not going to be open for browsing, I don't think, other than appointment for a while.
We're open for very limited browsing right now, in 2 stores every day, 1 store 2 days a week, and just a few people at a time. And we're finding that they are selling, they're grabbing stacks of sale books and used books. So, you know, per person, we're seeing, you know, kind of a good commitment there. Other than that, it's really a drag, and we've just tried to use our windows. We just are packing our windows with books. And, you know, to one of the books, the windows, it's a little more accessible. We went out and got a grabber so we could pull it out of there. But we're putting the puzzles out there. We're putting, you know, we changed all the shelves around. We put all, like, for example, our spinner racks of cards are all in the window now so people can point. I mean, it's madness. But yeah, it's definitely a problem. That's why I'm thinking maybe you just treasure hunt for a while, you know, for the things that you think you've got a way of selling them that will work even when people aren't browsing.
Yeah, our sale book sales are down 40%, and some of that attributed. We have 2 airport locations that are effectively shut down or are doing, you know, 10% of the business they'd normally do. But the neighborhood stores are also down because, again, people are just coming in. But we're selling a lot. The per transaction, like Amy said, people who are buying them are buying stacks. So our unit per receipt is pretty good. But yeah, with this happening, I mean, when we went down completely, when we were non-browsing at all, you know, not at all, then we sold 0. So we went, 4 months or whatever that was, 3 months where we sold 0. So, because we don't put anything on the website. So it was a real challenge, and it just kind of just stopped completely. So it's coming back slowly though. This week has actually been better. A lot of educational stuff starting to sell, puzzles, things like that are starting to move. Especially this week, I think people are starting to, come back a little bit more. So that's what we're seeing.
Mimi, you're doing curbside, Mimi? Is that right?
Yeah, and we actually have a pop-up tent that we're doing in our parking lot on the weekends only.
Oh, I think I heard about that. So, but
yeah.
One thing you can do is with the table that you're servicing people and, at your door, is you can kind of bigger table. We happen to be lucky to have one on wheels, and we just pile cool books and change that all the time. So at least when people come up to pick up their book, there's stuff that they can, shop from. It's not like it was, but at least we're trying to move the stuff that we already own instead of this kind of relentless barrage of things we have to buy every week from Ingram.
Yeah, and this is making me think we've been thinking about trying to do a homeschooling bundle, for lack of a better term, and just saying like, hey, for a 5th or a 6th grader, here's a bundle of 5 books that you guys can buy, and Remainders might be an awesome solution for that. So this has gotten me, thinking about a lot of stuff.
If I can put a plug in for one of the companies that I sell for, Texas Bookman actually does have some education workbooks right now that are really nice, and they definitely seem to be selling along with their puzzles for sure through all of this.
Yeah, the Flame Tree shiny journals from Texas Bookman always sell really well for us. So that's my Remainders experience is that.
Yeah. Yeah, with the Moomin puzzle, we really sold a lot. I mean, the puzzles we can't keep. I just keep on waiting for that to dry up, but it's a gift that keeps on giving. And the educational stuff, definitely. We're like, getting started, especially kindergarten, earlier grades. It's like a lot of people, new parents don't, it's challenging for them to figure out what to do there. So we're finding we just can't keep those in stock. We can't buy enough of them. So those are the positives.
They're shiny and they're not marked, and we sell them new. Yeah. So the markup is very, very, very helpful.
I like the sound of that.
Texas Bookman.
I can address the adding to, if you have an indie commerce website, there's a kind of easy way to get them onto your website without, and it's been a few years since I've done this because I'm not in the store anymore. But, originally I was trying to load them up with covers and everything, and it was hard. But there's a way to go into an indie commerce website and change the price on an individual title. So in an individual ISBN, so you can go in and adjust that discount until it hits the price that you want, and then you can have a whole page of remainder books without having to upload everything, because it'll just use the content and the images that are already there, and it'll just show it at a discounted price. So that's a fairly easy way to get a listing of what you might have remainder-wise up on your website if you have an indie commerce site.
Our trouble, though, or our dilemma is that I don't want to put our list of remainders and then find myself shipping out these books one at a time. It's too depressing and it's too much work, and it takes away from the beauty of the profitability of the remainder book. So, that's why I love used books, right? Used books walk in, you put a piece of pencil on them and put them on the shelf, and then they walk out. And nobody shipped anything, and nobody invoiced anybody. And it's awesome. So.
Yeah, we're starting to do our cheaper used books for pickup only, but putting them online just because it's such a browsing experience.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what stores are using the e-commerce for sale items? Do you know
I don't know off the top of my head, really. But it's a possibility.
We've always wanted to do it. It's just been challenging because we use a dummy ISBN, not the original ISBN. So we try to work with stock but it's never really. It's always seemed like a lot of work for, like Amy said, for selling an $8 book and having to ship it out. The shipping is, trying to jive that so you're actually making money is
Yeah, well, if you're charging shipping anyway for
Right.
a website order, but I just use the regular ISBN because originally I would try to put that dummy ISBN up and
Right.
all of that, and I just switched, so I'd use the existing ISBN and just give that ISBN a different discount to jig the discount until I got it at the
Got it to
price
that,
that I
right,
wanted. Yeah.
Well, we use Book Manager, and so when we enter our books into the inventory, our remainders in the inventory, it automatically gives it an R ISBN code.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, Copperfield's does something similar where they put like just a little letter at the end of the ISBN.
Mm-hmm.
That's a workaround a lot of people that have anthology use. They put like an X at the end for their used books or remainders.
Right.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, you know, we're going to do something this week. We're spending all week trying to correct our completely messed up inventory in every direction.
Yeah. It's that time, getting ready for hopefully a decent fourth quarter. We're going to go and cull through all our sections too, so it'll be interesting. Fun times.
Jeff, what's the ship time on some of those companies right now? Because I know like Texas Bookman, I was going to order, but then it was going to take forever.
Yeah, very good question. And I think that initially everyone, like everyone, was, you know, they were trying to figure out a lot of different things, and it was taking longer. Texas is on pretty much a regular ship time now. They're a little bit slow, so I probably would say they're at 5 to 7 days processing time before they ship it out, and then whatever shipping method you use to get it to you. Great Jones is pretty, they're pretty close to like normal, like, which is very fast. And then with the UK stuff, it takes as long as it always has, which is, you know, 60 days on average to get books from there. So they're, you know, a little bit slow. One of the challenges that they're all having, I think, is that they actually are getting the orders processed pretty quickly, but the carriers are also slow. I think they're a little overwhelmed with all the, you know, online delivery right now. So Texas has had some problems with FedEx taking longer than normal for the books to arrive.
I wanted to ask Rachel, do you have anything to say to people about the state of the world?
Well, since I've had a lot of downtime, unfortunately, I've looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of websites. I have a list of about 3,500 email addresses and names of people that have bought remainders from Daedalus. They've attended Cerobi, or they bought from us. But all I have were the email addresses and the names. So since I'm been half furloughed and had a lot of downtime, I've been looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of websites. And I would say the thing that I think remainders, I think kind of the opposite of what Nikolai said. I was a little bit disappointed when he said, not as a judgment, just disappointed that it's the reality for you, that you generally try to only sell things that you sold well as a trade book, as front list. And I think that's something that some people miss about remainders, is that it's a tool.
I think
It's a way to, okay, here's a good example. It's a way to sell things. Recently I saw in Shelf Awareness, there was a bookstore, it was an African-American bookstore, but she said 75% of the books we're taking orders for are for the same 10 titles. Now, remainders can be such a great tool to increase the depth of what you're selling. And if all of a sudden everybody's interested in a book on, you know, African-American history or anti-racism, you guys as booksellers know there are hundreds and hundreds of other books that they could read besides this one of the 10 that everyone's buying. And that's where you're useful to the community. And tons of those books are available in remainders. They're not the front list books. They're not the stuff that's selling this year or even last year. maybe it was written 20 years ago, but I think the use of the bookstores to the community is to be able to show them that other stuff, because all they're seeing right now are the few 10 titles that are put in front of their face, and it's not their fault. So they're looking for help on that. And you can enrich that category with all this stuff that you can buy for $2, $3, and you can bundle it. You can say, if you're interested, you want books on this topic, here are 20 other books you can read on this topic, and they're only $5 a piece. I can give you, I saw a book review in New York is doing remainder bundles, where you'll tell them a few things that you're interested in, and they'll sell you, say $40 for 5 books or something like that, and they'll select them. That's a way to sell remainders on the website. But I think, you know, the problem with Amazon and stuff is, like I said, there's the same 10 titles everyone's seeing, and nobody knows what else to buy, customers. So they need you to fill that out, flesh it out. There's 100 more books on African American history that led up to this book. That's #1 right now. Or there's tons of books by authors on this subject from this country, on authoritarianism from 30 years ago, or whatever. And that's what makes you guys so valuable to the community. And knowing books and the relationship of the depth of the relationship of different books to the things that are in people's faces right now is what's of use to them, and it can be accessible at remainder prices.
If I could add to that, I think that's a really good point, Rachel. One of the kind of pieces earlier on I glossed over because it was part of the introduction about why buying remainders. I think it's a great opportunity to fill out sections that are traditionally slower selling. And with good books, we're not talking about, you know, filler. We're talking about good, important books in those areas that just are not the last, you know, published in the last 2 years. And I think following what you sell is generally a good principle. And, you know, I think that's in some ways what Nick was saying, but also, you know, somebody mentioned not tying books earlier, and those, any used book buyer knows that those sell really well. And so that's a great opportunity. That's not going to be on your bestseller list, but it is going to sell when you order it, especially with a smaller store. And, you know, I know Hickleby's would have the perfect example in a kid's book as well.
You know, I think that you're really right, Rachel. And also when you have so your used book buying skills really come into play here when you're able to buy books and hold them in your hand, because even if without, you know, you don't know it, you never sold it new, you don't know, but you can tell a book of substance and a book that was worthy of the way it's marketed, who published it, the voices that are on the blurbs or whatever. So that I totally agree. We pick up so many really fine books, a lot of scholarly books, a lot of political science and history books that, again, they weren't bestsellers, they weren't things, and they're not necessarily things I can put on the stack table, although sometimes I can. If it's very thick, I can stack 3 now. That's my new rule. But it can fill out the gravitas of your offerings is really filled out. It's harder to do that when you're only looking at lists, because now you're just, oh, you know, a title catches your eye and you click on it and maybe it clicks to something, and often mostly it doesn't, or you're cutting and pasting it into, you know, Edelweiss or whatever. So it's harder to take the time, or it's not as easy, it's not as elegant a flow to find those books when you're looking online as when you're looking on person. When you go to these shows and you're being, you know, you're faced with, you know, hundreds of books you have to now go look through, you get into this rhythm of just, you know, this looks worthy, and you start pulling out those, and then you can kind of feast on them later, you know, and really get to the bottom of it. But that, for me, I learned that as a used book buyer, not as a new book buyer, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there are things like, for instance, Jeff sold me a couple books I can think of off the top of my head that did really well that we don't even really have a book in trade. Like there was one on how to play the ukulele, which I would have just skipped. And Jeff was like, oh no, you should try this. And it sold amazingly well. And there's a book on tarot, which we don't generally sell a lot of tarot books, but it sold really well as a sale book. So for us, I mean, we're just looking at it as, I mean, it may be slightly different. We only, let's say if we have like 80 display fixtures in a store, only 4 to 5 of them will be for sale books. So it's a real finite space. We have room for product. So it's kind of has to be a little bit more based off of what we see sold previously and use that as a kind of guide. But that being said, that's why you need to go to the shows, talk to your reps, and take flyers on things that don't work. And for art and for some subjects, it actually, yeah, you can't. In cooking too, if it's an interesting, Korean cookbook that looks good. I mean, cookbooks are huge because it might not have sold in trade, but if you see it, it's got good paper quality. All the measurements are in American measurements, not in UK measurements, and all things look right, great pictures, illustrations, then you're going to take it, of course. But for the trade stuff, we generally use a lot of what we did well with as a new book rather than that. So I guess, I mean, there are of course variables within what I said, because I think for art and cooking and things like that, and kids' books to a certain extent, it definitely, you're going to go off of the book and the feel and the look of the book.
No, he does not. Oh,
Amy, do you want to start?
Well, I didn't have it planned like that. I just, in this picture, no, I don't. I mean, I have a few books that we pulled out and set pictures of.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead then. I think it's rather ironic that I picked this book because Rachel let me know that it was available this morning, and it is actually a bestseller. So it's counter to kind of what she was talking about. And the reason that I picked it actually is that it sold out within a couple of hours, and I think that, and it was posted on the website. So it's maybe an example of
Can you bring them over here, please?
a really great book that they come and go quickly, and I think that's where the consolidation of orders can be helpful. And the other kind of thing that I would say about this is, although this book is sold out, and in particular Mimi, I think this might be a good match for you, but they will be receiving some more new press very soon, and there will in fact be more copies of this coming through, but a lot of other really great books.
Actually, 2 of the books that Emily picked to promote, which didn't quite make it to the slideshow, were from Great Jones. One was The Friend, and the other is They Can't Kill Us, which are both doing great. So. Yeah.
Valentina, could you, so this is a puzzle that's just recently arrived at Texas Bookman, and it sounds like, I think everyone on the call here is actually familiar with Texas. It sounds like they have gotten their journals before, which is actually the next slide. And I just wanted to say, puzzles definitely have continued to sell, especially out of the windows for booksellers. So that, quite honestly, has kept food on my table for the last few months. So in terms of a COVID kind of friendly product.
You and us both, babe.
Yeah. That's it for my recommendations. Nick, are you back on?
Yeah, I'm back on. Oh, I just said this one title that's we're selling well. It's a book, and it's an example of something that's sold. This is from Great Jones. It's this Pamela Burton Landscapes. It's a real beautiful book published by Princeton Architectural, and they get a lot of Princeton Architectural books, which work really well for us. And again, they're beautiful books. They're not marked at all. They're super clean. They actually, it's crazy with Great Jones, their books actually come in better condition than some publishers who ship direct to us. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's really good price. It's priced at $10 net, and yeah, it's a really strong seller for us. And yeah, I think that's my pick.